Chinese President Xi Jinping, as tensions remain high in the Middle East. The president accompanied by a number of business leaders, including Elon Musk, Tim Cook, and Larry Fink. We're going to have much more on this tomorrow night. Also, War Secretary Pete Hegseth today in front of the Senate Appropriations. Ever wonder why we can't get the Save America Act passed? Look no further. They can't even get Hegseth's title right, naming him as the Secretary of Defense rather than the Secretary of War on his name placard, as you can see. And South Carolina Republicans have shot down the state's efforts to redraw congressional lines that would have put the only congressional Democrat, James Clyburn, in danger. 5 state Republicans joined Democrats in tanking the redistricting plan. I smell 5 primaries coming on. Oh, and if you thought Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones was dumb just because he can't spell the word Virginia or senator, just wait until you see what he did this time. We got that coming up. But first, I love stories where the little guy defeats the government, especially when it comes to COVID censorship. Let's do this. Here's something you may not have heard about because they don't want you to hear about this, but it's equally as important as almost all the news over the last 6 weeks, including the Supreme Court overturning racial gerrymandering, by the way. Berenson versus Biden. Alex Berenson, a former New York Times reporter, just received a monetary settlement and acknowledgement of the suppression of his First Amendment rights by the U.S. government for challenging the COVID narrative during the pandemic. Here's a case of the government censoring someone because he had just legitimate questions and concerns about the COVID narrative. By the way, things he turned out to be right about. Folks, you know I love a good, like take on the government and win story. This is it. And especially important because we got another one of these power grab fake pandemics coming around with this rat virus that they're talking about off this cruise ship that the WHO is desperately trying to make a thing so they can raise money. You know the government will try and censor people again if they stand in their way of their money and power grab, just like they did in COVID. So here's what happened, folks. This is actually fascinating. I'm telling you this so you don't stay silent the next time they do it, because the government will try to do it again at some point. Here's how this whole thing happened, okay? July 2021. The White House press secretary Jen Psaki and President Biden publicly attacked social media platforms for allowing what they just unilaterally declared as misinformation, okay? With Biden stating that it was killing people.
What's your message to platforms like Facebook? They're killing people.
The irony is that that was actually the misinformation, and new data suggests the vaccine may have actually killed more people than the virus itself. But shortly after that, on July 16th, the same day, a COVID policy critic, center-left, former New York Times reporter Alex Berenson received his first suspension on Twitter for saying, quote, something really odd is going on here. The vaccines are failing. After more COVID cases were happening after the claims were that if you got vaccinated, you couldn't get COVID.
The vaccine protects even against the variants that are circulating. And thirdly, we're seeing that it is very unlikely that a vaccinated person, even if there's a breakthrough infection, would transmit it to someone else.
Legitimate question that he kept asking on social media. Then again, on July 27th, Berenson was suspended for no specific reason other than COVID misinformation, very ambiguous, and once reinstated, asked again. Then on August 28th, as you can see, 2021, Berenson tweets out a basic observation about the vaccine saying, quote, it doesn't stop infection or transmission. Don't think of it as a vaccine. Think of it as a therapeutic with a terrible side effect profile. We want to mandate it? Insanity. Resulting in a Twitter permanent ban for his account for a, quote, violation of their terms of use. Now, shortly after, Berenson then sued Twitter. And in July 2022, Twitter settled. They reinstated his account and admitted his tweets did not violate their rules. Victory number 1 for Alex Berenson. Now, we didn't find out until December of 2022 via the 10th installment of the Twitter files that the Biden White House had been pressuring Twitter actually this whole time and other platforms to suppress people saying things they didn't like about COVID. Things like vaccine side effects, natural immunity, ivermectin, masks being useless, or lab leak discussion. Now, the files showed us that sometimes, even when some flag content was accurate, but inconvenient, which is weird because I'm looking at this thing called the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging from the freedom of speech, which they abridged on, or of the press, which Alex Berenson was a member of, or the right of people to peaceably assemble, which they stopped people from going to church, so they did that too. And also, they can't stop you from petitioning the government for a redress of grievances, which they did on Twitter, which is exactly what Alex Berenson was trying to do. They can't do that, but they did. Under Democrats, by the way. And the Supreme Court case, if you go all the way back in history, New York Times versus Sullivan, ironically, because Berenson was once at the New York Times, that decision said, quote, debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. And they censored him, which the government quietly censored him in spite of that decision. But also, in those Twitter files, we found out that former FDA commissioner, then Pfizer board member Scott Gottlieb, privately complained to Twitter about Berenson. That also led to his suspension. And then, April 12th, 2023, Berenson had enough, sues everyone. Berenson v. Biden, naming Biden, the White House, COVID police, Andrew Slotvik, Robert Flaherty, Vivek Murthy, but also private individuals like Scott Gottlieb and Albert Bourla, the Pfizer CEO, alleging a conspiracy to violate his First Amendment rights by coercing Twitter to censor him. Think about this. Ultimately, his claims against Pfizer were ultimately dismissed, but it turns out you can buy big lawyers after making $80 billion from a vaccine that didn't do what they say it did. But his case against the government was in fact allowed to go forward. And yesterday, they bent the knee. And the Trump administration, of which, by the way, Alex had been very critical of in his journalistic history, acknowledged to him that, yes, your First Amendment rights were in fact violated. And then they paid him a six-figure settlement. And here's why this is very important to every American, regardless of your party. The government is not your friend. And it is always us versus them to maintain all of our rights, even for people of opposing parties. Here, not only was Berenson correct about most of the things he was saying, but now the federal government has admitted in a legal settlement that they violated his First Amendment rights. Not only that, but this proves that the left has shifted way far left, even from fact. Alex Berenson was and still is not really a Trump ally, folks. As recently as yesterday, admitted to still being critical of Trump. But through the evolution of simply asking questions about COVID, he de facto moved more into Trump's camp, culminating in even thanking the president in a tweet yesterday. This is the first of its kind in a government censorship case, I think, ever. Now, how many media companies like us here at Newsmax or influencers or, I don't know, just regular folks have been suspended under the same banner? How much revenue had been lost over those censorships? How many claims that turned out to be right were censored? But more importantly, by who? How many people were injured or harmed or even killed because the government or private companies or social media platforms censored information that could have potentially saved lives, ivermectin being one of them? How many people got the vaccine because they were told by the government that it was good, but might not have if they had read Alex Berenson's tweet questioning the efficacy? People who may have gone on to have heart complications, which we now know be attributed to the COVID vaccine. This case is not only a victory for free speech, but has opened the floodgates for massive class action lawsuits and settlements and even damages. This cause reinforces what I say almost every single night. Question absolutely everything. Folks, pick every single fight because the questions you don't ask may lead to myocarditis. The fights you don't pick may take away your freedom of speech or your Second Amendment rights or your Fourth Amendment rights or whatever. And if you feel like you're just some small person that doesn't have the power to fight, I'll leave you with the quote I have in my email signature by Thomas Jefferson. One man with courage is a majority. The man himself, Alex Berenson. All right, Alex, never thought I'd have you on my program. Honestly, it was not on my bingo card. Huge victory. Honestly, though, it's like got to be bittersweet.
Yeah, it is a bit bittersweet because, it's been a very long time coming. And honestly, there was part of me that wanted to keep fighting, try to go to the Supreme Court, try to get a bigger victory that might have opened the way for a real reconsideration of what happens when the government violates a private citizen's First Amendment rights. Because right now, it's very, very hard to get money damages in that case. And really, the Supreme Court or Congress is going to have to change that. But ultimately, I felt like settling this and getting the government to acknowledge what had happened was very important, and also would enable me to pursue my appeal against the Pfizer defendants. And that is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of the things. It doesn't matter right, left, up, down, wherever. The First Amendment is the First Amendment. And if you don't have it, then I don't have it, then Joe Blow doesn't have it, and anybody else doesn't have it. How can this is like an issue that people of different mindsets can definitely come together on.
Well, you would think, but I mean, the truth is, and we've seen this with both parties, but really, especially on the left, it's very easy to stand up for the First Amendment. But then once you get into power, you say, well, I don't like journalists asking all these questions. Or, you know what, I think the vaccine is really good. And if I have to suppress dissent, and if I have to lean on Twitter to get people like Berenson off there, I'm just going to do it. It's the right thing to do for the country. And you know what? It wasn't the right thing to do. But frankly, even if the vaccine had 100% effectiveness and no side effects, it would have been the wrong thing to do. Because in this country, we're supposed to believe in free and open debate. And I do think that the Trump White House has not been perfect, but certainly they've been better than the left on this, at least as far as I can tell, and at least as far as having debate on social media.
Yeah, sure. And the other thing too is, this will happen again, by the way, under whatever party, because bureaucrats are pretty much universal in D.C. Unless somebody goes to jail. Do you see, even if you're Supreme Court, if you get to the Supreme Court and you're able to appeal against Pfizer or whoever, do you even in your wildest dreams see anybody ever going to jail over this?
No one will go to jail. I mean, this is a civil lawsuit, right? So no one's going to go to jail. Is it possible that, my case could sting Pfizer enough that they would take this seriously going forward and say, you know what, we're not going to work with the government to violate other people's rights going forward? It's possible. But here's the bigger point. So it's great to be on with you. I'm glad to get coverage for this. But imagine if the situation were reversed, okay? Imagine if a journalist had come out and said, I have hard evidence that the Trump administration and ExxonMobil got me kicked off X because I've been writing about climate change, which is essentially the same thing that happened to me in reverse.
Yeah, fact.
Okay. Every newspaper in the country, the New York Times, the Washington Post, every NBC, they'd all be going crazy how terrible the Trump administration is. And yet not one of those outlets will cover this case because it's embarrassing for them. It's embarrassing for them the way that Biden administration behaved. It's embarrassing for them that they all got in the pocket of Pfizer and all went crazy about the mRNAs, which have not worked very well. And it's, that cone of silence to me is look, we need a First Amendment, but we also need the press to do its job. And it has just completely failed in this case.
Yeah, look, dude, I'm totally with you on this one. Here's the thing, though, is this is not just with First Amendment. I mean, this goes to anything. I mean, you pick something out of the sky, like the open fields doctrine. I don't know if you're a hunter or not, but I'm a big hunter. Game wardens can just walk onto your property and search anything they want because, they have a need through the open, but it doesn't say that in the Constitution. Or, what is it before the soldier's right to quarter, before they can just say the soldier has to stay? I mean, what is the line and how do you draw that?
Well, I mean, the Constitution doesn't get suspended because it's inconvenient. That in our initial Berenson v. Biden claim, one of the, the first line, maybe not the first line, but one of the first lines in the whole complaint was, the Constitution does not get suspended because there's an epidemic with a 0.5% or 0.3%, whatever it was, very low fatality rate. That's not how our country works. It's when it's when the government most wants to crack down that we most need these protections.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Alex Berenson, keep up the good fight. I love when the little guy beats the government, regardless of the administration.
Thank you for having me on, Carl.
Of course. All right. Coming up, a terrifying scene in Massachusetts. A career criminal allegedly, at this point, even though it's on video, opening fire on random drivers with a rifle that you're not supposed to have in Massachusetts. I mean, if only Massachusetts had stricter gun. Oh, wait, they do. Some of the strictest in the state. Two-Way Tuesday on that in a sec. But first, Virginia Democrats scrambling to save their redistrict fight. But now the state of Virginia's AG is getting absolutely destroyed over another major blunder in filing. Wait till you hear this one.
A Social Security update. Millions collect Social Security, but 70% of Americans don't get their full benefits. Now, a new report shows how to boost your Social Security by as much as $188,000. Author Matthew Allen reveals 5 key strategies in a new report. Newsmax calls it the best guide for retirees. Everyone needs this free Social Security report. Act today to get your full benefits.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
This Memorial Day, we honor the brave who stood watch over our nation's security. At PCmatic, we're proud to continue that legacy by protecting your digital world. From American homes and local businesses to our nation's government agencies, we provide the only cybersecurity that's 100% researched, developed, and supported right here in the USA. PCmatic, American made, American strong. Visit PCmatic.com today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website.
Just when you thought spelling errors would be the only embarrassing part of Virginia Democrats' latest legal mess, think again. The Virginia AG, Jay Jones, has filed an emergency appeal asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the Virginia Supreme Court redistricting rule. And while his office may have finally run spell check on Senate and the state's name of Virginia, they apparently forgot to update the template because this one is addressed to the state Supreme Court of Virginia. That's right. The filing, meant for the highest court in the land, appears to still be addressed to the state court that they're appealing from. It's important to note, this is the same guy who once spelled attorney wrong on his own website. And remember the other day, he obviously misspelled Senate and his own state. So he's just, I mean, at least he's black, so we have diversity and stuff, right? Nothing says trust our legal argument quite like stupidity. Senior columnist at Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter, and also an attorney at Judicial Watch and author of the fantastic book Defiant, Christina Bobb. Okay, Kurt, I saw you go off on this today. I was like, my man, call him up, get him on the show.
You know, imagine showing up to formation at your buds class and you've forgotten your pants.
Oops.
The only good thing about this is this guy may forget his bullet so he can't murder the children of his political opponents. So, I mean, I'm trying to see the silver lining in this cloud. It's humiliating. I was a lawyer for 30 years, and I just loved when other guys did things like that. I didn't because I pay attention to detail.
Yeah, weird. And you did this thing called proofreading. I may have pronounced that wrong.
I have associates to do that, but yeah.
But Christina, in all your years of being a lawyer, could you have imagined that, like, you have this many errors and you're still elected as Attorney General of a state?
Oh, this is humiliating. This is an absolutely humiliating mistake. He absolutely needed to have, I don't care if it's an associate, a paralegal, a legal secretary, but somebody needs to be reading through it, doing a proofread, somebody who didn't write it, and make sure that these errors don't exist. The worst of it isn't just the embarrassment, but it completely undermines his arguments, which I don't think were very good anyway, but it tells the court, it telegraphs to everybody that this isn't something that he's taking seriously. This is not a real, truly thought out effort to try to petition the highest court in our land. It's a slapstick thrown together. It's a cut and paste job, and I think that's the way the Supreme Court will take it.
In all the times I've appealed to the Supreme Court on everything, I make sure I proofread it. That's the standard operation. It's the Supreme Court. I mean, unbelievable. But the Fifth Circuit Court, Kurt, the U.S. Court of Appeals, has unanimously removed a previous block on Mississippi's redrawing their maps to redraw a race-based district out of there, leaving the sham J6 committee chair, Benny Thompson, in danger of losing his seat. Wah.
Oh, well. Oh, sad. Oh, no. I think it's hilarious that people think that they can change the rules and yet everyone else will remain in the status quo. Every time you, as you well know from your service, every time you change one element in the battle space, everything changes.
Correct.
You've got to expect it, and it's hilarious that they never expected that we would return the favor to them. But I'm glad we finally are. I'm glad somebody drank a gallon of testosterone because the Republicans were running short of it for a long, long time.
Yeah. Alabama also, Christina, getting a win. The Supreme Court clearing the way for the state to put in place the new House map ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. This is we're going up on I think 12-seat swing at this point for Republicans.
Yeah, at least. It could be higher than that. Not that it would all come into play in 2026. Some of them might not come into play until later elections. But yes, we're looking at a massive shift in the way that at least a dozen, potentially two, are drawn throughout the country. And I completely agree with Chris. Finally, we're getting around to this. I mean, Republicans are decades late at doing this. This is something that should have been handled decades before. Republicans should have had supermajorities in at least the House, if not the Senate. And certainly with the supermajority, you can impeach judges. With a supermajority in the Senate, you can get a lot more done. That Republicans have been sitting around for a generation twiddling their thumbs. And it took the fear of, oh my gosh, we might lose everything for good to finally get them off their rear end to do this. So let's go.
Better late than never. But Bacardi Sellers has a complete meltdown over this, Kurt, on CNN while debating Kevin O'Leary on redistricting. Watch this.
There are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a just understand.
Okay. Bacardi, please.
Just
I'm
understand.
pointing something out to you. The Constitution is being upheld. Do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the Constitution of the United States of America?
Bacardi, I'm gonna stop you.
Kurt, I don't know if he realizes, but black people can still vote.
Yes, and they can still elect the representative of their choice if they can convince enough other Americans to do that. And in fact, in places like South Carolina, why there's a black senator. It's Tim Scott. Yeah. And this stuff about, well, there are people who fought and died for this stuff. Well, Carl, you fought. I ran a heavily armed car wash. But, we both showed up. Yeah. And when I showed up with my guys out in the desert, far away where it was hot and miserable, and I had to, share a tent with a scorpion, I wasn't doing it so we could divide up representation by race. Right. In fact, that was the exact opposite of what I was doing, just like it was the exact opposite of what my great-great-grandfather was doing when he earned his brass Grand Army of the Republic tombstone monument in the Civil War.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's one of these things too, like Larry Elder, the black guy who ran for governor last election in California. He's the new face of white supremacy. So we'll just leave it there. Kurt, Christina, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, the men and women of law enforcement are all too often sacrificed for political reasons. Up next, we talk to the first man to rise through the ranks of the NYPD from cadet to commissioner. Ray Kelly, commissioner, joins me next.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
In a recent TV commercial, I mentioned that my mother had switched to Pure Talk. Now people want me to prove it. So, here's Mom.
Hi, Mike.
For the record, you really are my mother?
Yes.
And you really did switch to Pure Talk?
Yes.
Please tell America why you switched.
Because you said that I should.
No, I mean, was it the blazing fast network or the super low price? Or did you just like the idea of being in business with an American wireless company who looks after our vets?
That's all very nice, but mostly I just like to support whatever you're doing.
For those of you who aren't my mother, Pure Talk is offering unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data for just $34.99 a month. That's half the cost of the big guys with no contracts and no commitments.
You've always had commitment issues, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah, that's my mom. Pure Talk, where the savings are real, and so are the mothers.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed. And you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening. Yeah, it's been forever. Dale, we can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield.
My earwax buildup was frustrating. Then I tried new Lipo Earwax Cleanser. The revolutionary formula dissolves earwax 5 times faster than the leading brand and helps prevent future buildup. Feel the difference with new Lipo Earwax Cleanser.
I wish I wasn't afraid to smile.
I wish I could get implants.
I wish I knew who to trust.
I'm not looking for another quick fix.
I want a smile I know will last.
Clear Choice smiles are made to stand the test of time. They're built by dental implant experts, backed by 20 years of pioneering research and a lifetime warranty on premium arches. Our smiles are built for life. Schedule your free consultation today.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
Well, as we continue our week-long series for the men and women of law enforcement and how police officers often fall prey to the politics that they're not even privy to. A case in point. This week, a New York Police Department captain, James Wilson, has now been reassigned to a 911 call center after these, what he thought were private conversations about New York City Mayor Mamdani.
Mayor Zoran Mamdani, you're saying it's expendable?
But he's your boss. You want a minute? He's your boss.
He's like temporary.
He's your boss.
No,
is he your boss though? Is he your boss?
He's your boss.
He's your boss. Exactly.
He's what? He's embarrassment.
Now, Wilson also railing against Democrats, calling them a waste of human race, but I happen to agree with him on that one. According to the NYPD, though, uniformed officers, which he was in his uniform, are prohibited from endorsing political candidates or publicly expressing their personal views and opinions concerning political parties or candidates. Now, is this punishment warranted or just another example of a police officer falling victim to the altar of politics? A man who knows all about the trials faced by police officers, the first person to rise from NYPD cadet to commissioner, former NYPD Commissioner Ray Kelly. Sir, unfortunate scenario, but letter of the law, I think he was wrong.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, common sense has to prevail here. You're speaking on television about your boss. Consequences are going to happen. Now, I don't think he's going to receive more discipline, but he could, because that's what the cases hold. If you're in uniform if you're making specific allegations or disparaging remarks that involve you personally, then you don't get First Amendment protection.
Right.
If in fact you're not in uniform, but you're making sort of criticism of policies in the department,
Sure.
First Amendment protection.
Yeah,
But
well,
there's all sorts of variations of that.
No, 100%. Now, okay, but there is this growing sense, and I'm not justifying it. Like, I happen to agree with the guy, but I'm also not in a police uniform. But there's this growing sentiment that Mamdani doesn't have their back. After the snowball fight, that guy got, people mashing police officers with snowballs. They walked free. You've got all this subway. You've got a 300% spike in murders on the New York City subway. Police officers are feeling tapped and stressed.
Yeah, understandably. But those comments, those complaints should probably be made by fraternal organizations. And that's kind of their job to do that. Individual police officers, certainly one in uniform, are at risk if they do that. But the unions are the ones that should bear the brunt of the comments.
No, I agree with you. It is an unfortunate scenario. Here's something I want to get to. You were commissioner during the first terror attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, or at least, obviously going back way before the 9/11. 8 years later, towers taken down. Thousands died that day, but tens of thousands have been diagnosed with 9/11 related diseases while they were responding to the pile. This is something that people 25 years later have forgotten, that we've lost more people due to those diseases than we have on the actual day of the attack.
You're absolutely right, Carl. And people are not talking about it, not thinking about it. But the effects of that day just linger. And we had people die literally once a week who were affected by toxic materials and that they encountered while they worked at the Ground Zero. The fire department too, as well. They're in a similar situation.
Yeah.
But it's very tragic, and it's going to continue, unfortunately. And you see that this week in the Law Enforcement Week service that I've gone to many times. Very, very moving in Washington. And that reminds you of the sacrifices that were made then.
Right.
Let alone now.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner Ray Kelly, we appreciate what you did, sir, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
All right. Likewise. All right. Coming up, Mamdani, speaking of, failing New York City, dumping a record $44 billion into public schools at $44,000 per student, and the results plummeting enrollment, horrible test scores. Hey, you get what you voted for. Culture Clash next.
Everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.
Hi, I'm Sally with sellmypolicy.com, the fast concierge service here to help you sell your life insurance policy for cash now. Our experienced team makes it fast and easy for you to get your offer. Use the money however you want. Cover healthcare costs, pay off debt, or take the trip of a lifetime. Use the funds for supplemental retirement income, investments, or home improvements, or give money to loved ones now rather than later. John sold his policy for $590,000 in cash, which he used to pay for health care. And Cheryl sold her policy for $90,000 in cash and used it to supplement her retirement income. If you are over 65 with a life insurance policy of $100,000 of coverage up to $50 million of coverage, then you may qualify. With Sell My Policy, some people choose to sell all or just part of their policy so they can access cash now while also keeping coverage in place for their loved ones.
It's easy to find out what your policy could be worth today. Call 800-961-7355. That's 800-961-7355. Or visit sellmypolicy.com.
Why lapse or surrender your policy? Sell it and you can stop making premium payments. You may receive substantially more cash than what your insurance carrier will offer. Plus, you'll get paid fast. Arthur sold his policy for $84,000 in cash, which he used to help reduce his debt. SellMyPolicy.com has a large network of funders. That means more money in your pocket. If you or a loved one has a policy, call now. Trusted by seniors, there's no obligation to sell. Find out what your policy is worth today.
It's fast and free with Sell My Policy.
Talk with a policy expert now to see how much cash you could receive. Call 800-961-7355. That's 800-961-7355. Or visit sellmypolicy.com. Sellmypolicy.com.
My name is Karen, and I'm the head pharmacist at Corvallis Drug. This pharmacy has actually been here for over 100 years. I love the fact that I know all of my customers by name. We'll get customers come in and they're looking for a brain supplement, and Prevagen is the one I recommend. My husband, I put him on it about 6 months ago, and he's noticed a difference. I've noticed a difference in him. It's just a product that I believe in.
Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years.
Nobody wants to put a new roof over their head. It's too expensive. And if they can extend the life of that roof and get 5 more years or 10 more years, it's a no-brainer.
What RoofMax does is it helps people in that they don't have to spend that $15,000, $20,000 on a new roof. They can spend pennies on the dollar.
The RoofMax product was a small percentage of cost of replacing a roof.
Get your roof treated now, but pay later, with no payments for a full year.
Cholesterol support shouldn't stop at diet and exercise. Meet Human Cholesterol Health Daily, the only cholesterol support supplement to combine these unique, clinically studied forms of ingredients for game-changing cholesterol support. Now available at your nearest Walmart.
All right, folks, we got some breaking news out of Tennessee. The State House Speaker, Cameron Sexton, is removing Democrat lawmakers in the House from standing committees and subcommittees after their disruptive demonstrations during a special session last week in which the state redrew congressional districts. Sexton citing that the Democrats interlocking arms in the well of the House, blocking aisles on the floor, and several other violations. Good riddance, guys. Get lost. That's how you debate. All right, the numbers in New York City ain't adding up. The city is dumping a record $44.6 billion into public schools. This is insane. The city's overall budget is for fiscal year 2026 is $115.9 billion for the whole city. That means the school's budget is like 40% of the entire city, which is a lot of cities have that, but these numbers are staggering. The most maddening part is because the city's Department of Education spends over $42,000 per student. That's twice the national average, while simultaneously the public school enrollment has declined by 158,000 kids. So now let's look at how much of the New York City public schools budget is going to staff and administration. You got $12.9 billion goes to the salaries for staff, which is almost 30%. 78,000 teachers, 5,400 principals and assistant principals and deans. I don't know why you need that many. 5,500 social workers. They're not doing a great job. 3,000 school secretaries. 22,000 paraprofessionals. I don't even know what that is. 4,000 other staff. So that's 117,900 staffers with a $12.9 billion budget. Split evenly. The average for someone working at a public school in New York City is $110,000 a year, with the median income of the private sector just under $70,000. Now, looking at the salaries of a New York City teacher compared to, let's say, a public teacher in Syracuse, New York, has a starting salary and a bachelor's degree and almost, with some experience, $70,000, and almost $78,000 for someone with a master's degree teaching with experience. You see the difference, and people will whine, oh, Carl, it's the cost of living adjustment. No. We are wasting taxpayer dollars. There's no reason teaching a kid should cost $42,000 a student in a city where 8th grade only has a 23% students proficient in math and only 29% proficient in reading. Which brings me to my one bill, where I propose a mythical single-point solution that if I was a member of Congress, I might put forward. One bill, one solution, one page, because this shouldn't be that hard. But my bill would entitle every teacher would get a median salary statewide. And for those teachers teaching above the 50% score mark, they would get bonused. And they'd be based their salaries on how well students test. Newsmax contributor Kay Smythe and host of Tony Katz Today, Tony Katz himself. Kay, I don't see any logic flaw in this, and it would save people money.
I think it's absolutely genius. I was actually going to propose something similar myself. I don't understand why public schools continue to fail students when I also just ran the math. That's more money. There is more money spent per student in public schools in New York than in private schools here where I live in North Carolina. It's more expensive to put your child through school if you're going by just like those bare numbers through public school in New York than it is to put them in very high achieving private Christian schools here in North Carolina. It is absolutely brain melting. It is yet another embarrassment for New York City. And I mean, at this point, like the tinfoil hat, Carl, says that there's got to be a reason why we are consistently dumbing down kids that are sent to public schools across America. There has to be a reason why these failures just keep going, and there is absolutely no reason for it to be this way.
Yeah, but Tony, the other thing is, I don't know if Hochul and Mamdani went to their own schools where they're not proficient in math, but they're now bragging that they've balanced the budget in Manhattan because the state kicked in an extra $4 billion to bail out Mamdani's budget.
Yeah, you can always balance the budget when you get a loan, and this is Kathy Hochul, desperate to appease and try and get re-election. But I have to disagree with both of you. I mean, your numbers all make sense when you take a look. If it's $77,000 as an average starting salary in New York when you have a master's degree, but 29% reading proficiency, that's what you said, 23% math proficiency, there comes a moment where all investors ask, what is my return on investment? And since there is no return on investment in large swaths of the public education system in America, I have to disagree with you, Carl. The answer is, there are the numbers. This is really remarkable stuff to take a look at. People should be paying attention to this. Put that on Carl's Twitter feed right there. The answer is end public education as we know it. Break the teachers' unions in two. End this boondoggle, because none of this money is about the student, $44,000 per student. It's not. It's about what the union can get, what they can extract from those who live there. This is abusive. This is broken. And the answer is end public education as we know it, because it doesn't work. They failed.
Yeah, 100%. But speaking of failed, Kay, the Seattle's teachers union, to Tony's point, just elected a new president. Oh, but they're now they just went on leave because they're under investigation for allegedly abusing a student. I mean, a kid with autism.
You really just can't make this stuff up. Again, part of me hopes, like whenever we sort of cover stories like this, part of me hopes it's just not true. Part of me hopes that this never happened to this poor child, but, you know, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And it's kind of heartbreaking. But again, we're looking at a liberal city. We're looking at somewhere that also has pretty low rates of literacy, low math scores. I mean, the same thing can be found across schools, across the predominantly liberal parts of America.
Yeah.
I don't really, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, it is crazy to me. And what's even crazier is like the money that gets spent. Tony, I got about a minute left. Diapers. California, Newsom had a $20 million diaper program, and it got messy, I guess, dare I say, because none of it went to diapers.
It went to overhead. It went to an organization that his wife decided to pick, and there's a family friend involved, and all of the rest. Anytime you don't allow the market to do its job and you put things in the way, it can't work. And to Kay's point, where there's smoke, there's fire. Does anybody remember Ian Roberts? Ian Roberts was the superintendent of the Des Moines school, who we learned wasn't in the country legally. The thing that connects Seattle to Des Moines is that leftists don't actually check to see if anybody has qualifications. They're checking the boxes of whether or not it fits the woke agenda. And that's the problem.
And leftists are the first ones to brag about said qualifications, whether they have them or not. Tony, Kay, always a pleasure. And you guys didn't get me in trouble today. All right, coming up.
We'll try next time.
A rifle-wielding lunatic that should have been in jail, actually was in jail, running through the streets of gun-controlled Massachusetts in a random shooting, critically injuring 2. But of course, this career criminal was let out on a sweetheart deal by a liberal judge. 2A Tuesday, next.
Are you looking for true financial freedom? Then you're in the right place. If you are a business owner, part of the military community, or a hardworking American building for your family, your path to wealth is unique. At Siebert Financial, we get it. That's why we offer tailor-made investment guidance. We've been doing this for more than 55 years. Start your path to financial freedom today. Talk to our dedicated team at Siebert Financial.
Wow. Lo and behold.
I know that walk anywhere.
Welcome to the set of Tulsa. It's a privilege to see you here.
Oh, my God. If any first responder or Gold Star would have someone die in the line of duty and they leave a young family behind, we pay every mortgage off in America.
Which is such a humane thing to do, to take care of the people that are taking care of us.
Exactly.
I'm Sylvester Stallone. Please donate $11 a month at t2t.org.
Ever wished you could brew your own beer, but figured it was too complicated, too messy, too much effort? Well, now you can. Meet Pinter, the home beer system everyone's talking about. Fresh beer, brewed and tapped by you. No fuss, no guesswork, just brew, chill, tap, done. You can craft 12 pints with every brew. Crisp lager, juicy and hoppy IPAs, smooth stouts, plus brew beers from top craft breweries you know and love. From the first tap to the last toast, hosting just got an upgrade. Nothing beats sharing your own fresh beer with friends. You don't need a garage brewery. You don't need a chemistry set. You just need a Pinter. Right now, get your Pinter free when you join our flexible beer plan. Choose your beers, brew fresh at home, and tap into the world's best beer experience. Free Pinter. Freshly brewed beer. Zero fuss. Go to pinter.com/spring to claim your offer today.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
From senior to childcare to pets and more, the new Care.com makes it easier than ever to find the care you need. And you don't have to hire just anyone. You can find a background-checked caregiver who's the right fit for you. Join now and find care at Care.com.
All right, 2A Tuesday, let's do some gun stuff. Starting out in Massachusetts, where so are criminals, apparently. A gun-wielding career criminal opening fire at random cars just driving down the road, leaving 2 people with life-threatening injuries before the maniac was shot by responding officers. I know. How could this happen in such a heavily gun-controlled state, right? But the gunman, Tyler Brown, allegedly fired, it's on video again, 50 to 60 rounds from an, quote, assault-style rifle, not allowed in Massachusetts, as he walked down a Cambridge street at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like I said, career criminal. He pled guilty in 2021 to charges including armed assault with intent to murder and attempted assault and battery by means of discharging a firearm, firing at Boston police officers. Prosecutors said that Tyler Brown fired a total of 13 rounds at police then and recommended a 12-year prison sentence followed by 5 years of probation, but a judge handed out a 5 to 6 year sentence, 3 years probation. And at that time, that shooting, he was on probation for a 2014 conviction for assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. So just awesome. This guy continued to be back out on the streets. And the best part about this is an armed Marine veteran helped Massachusetts police officers knock down this lunatic. Another case of a good guy with a gun that no doubt he probably had to jump through all kinds of hoops to have the ability to carry one himself. Cam Edwards, host of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company podcast, and AWR Hawkins, Second Amendment columnist for Breitbart News. Cam, I just don't understand how this happened in an area where you're not allowed to have that gun.
I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, Carl? You know, we were told time and time again, all we have to do is pass a law and we don't have to worry about these types of things. Well, Massachusetts passed some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country just 2 years ago, Chapter 135. Actually, it's being challenged in court, and there's a referendum to overturn it coming up on the ballot this November. But as you say, you've got a judge that defied the will of a prosecutor and defied common sense by releasing this guy after just a short sentence. Thankfully, we did have an armed citizen, somebody who is willing to go through all of the rigmarole you have to undergo in Massachusetts to exercise your Second Amendment rights. And this Marine veteran did that and was in a position to save lives. Thank God that he was there. Because, frankly, you're right. Massachusetts makes it incredibly easy for violent criminals to evade the law, but they make it awfully tough for law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights.
AWR?
Same thing. I mean, that was my first thought. You know, this is, according to Mike Bloomberg's Every Town for Gun Safety, Massachusetts #3 in the country for gun laws, including, as you've already pointed out, a ban on the very type of firearm this individual used. But I'm like Cam. Thank God that we did have one armed citizen who was willing to, and not only willing to shoot this guy or shoot at him, but also went and used his body as protection for a woman in a car, got her out of a car and got her out of the line of fire. This guy's a hero in my mind.
Yeah. All right, New Jersey, Cam, may have actually slipped up while defending its own ammo ban. Now, according to a new report, attorneys for the state of New Jersey made a significant error while trying to fend off a Second Amendment challenge to the state's ban on civilian possession of hollow point ammunition, which is all I carry in most circumstances. Now, in the lawsuit filed in February 2025, Gun Owners of America and other Second Amendment organizations, the court, the state defending it, said that, well, these things are in common use, so therefore we have to ban them, which is the exact definition of why you can't ban them.
I know. They also claim that hollow points are militaristic by design, and that's why they're not covered by the Second Amendment, even though our military doesn't really use.
I was never issued hollow points overseas.
Right. No, I mean, so New Jersey says, well, you got to use full metal jacket. Well, that's actually the most common military ammunition. So they don't know what they're talking about. And, you know, one of the reasons why hollow points have become, I think, the standard definition for self-defense is that you don't have to worry about over-penetration like you do with a full metal jacket round, right? If you live in a city, you live in an apartment building, you know, you shoot a full metal jacket and that could go through a wall after it leaves a person's body. Sure. Whereas, you know, if you got a hollow point, you don't have to worry so much about that. It's actually safer for everybody but the bad guy who's getting the receiving end of the bullet.
AWR, is there any reasoning with these people?
There's no reasoning, none whatsoever. And although I know you know, Carl, firsthand, but although this is not a military round, I'm not scared when they use that phraseology because as I told some people today, I go, you know why we beat the redcoats when they stormed over in our fields? Our general store workers, our blacksmiths, our farmers beat them because we had guns that were very much like the ones they were using against us. And that's what our founders intended. We don't have guns to duck hunt and play games with. We have guns to repel a tyranny. And so I don't care whether it's militaristic or not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we should have semi and full auto for freedom and extra freedom. But that's just me. Cam, AWR, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, before we go, left-wing Australian singer and his girlfriend try to dabble in American politics. Backfires. Next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people. But the food crisis is growing for Jewish families and especially for the elderly.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Your gift helps provide critical food when it's needed most. Call or go online now.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, and we must reach them now before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people. We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
When curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. See their stories at Ancestry.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
About one of the funniest cases of actions having consequences ever. Kelly Holiday, I've never heard, but a singer from Australia, had his U.S. visa revoked for making some very, let's just say, insinuating videos with his girlfriend online. Now, the boiling point seems to be when his girlfriend posted a video to her TikTok for some morality points with her liberal followers.
Every day, there's another happening, right? Awful for your country. Awful, right? Why don't we redirect this energy to something else, you know?
As the video went on, she basically insinuated for violence against taking out one person that rhymes with Trump. His girlfriend, who basically ruined it for him, trying her best to clean up their image after apologizing only after her boyfriend had to cancel his tour here in America because they're not allowed in the country now. She claims it was an innocent joke. I said, maybe don't make stupid videos threatening our elected officials, Rob.
Woke Australians are some of the worst.
Yeah.
Woke Australians are insufferable.
You live in a penal colony.
Right,
leave it alone.
Exactly. And they're trying to destroy it.
Yeah.
Carl, good to see you. Word.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.